the f... Hit the intro. We got a lot to talk about. Okay, the trailers weren't good, I wasn't optimistic, but I went in with an open mind, I gave it a fair shot, and... wow. I think we need to backtrack a little bit before I dive into this, because all the buzz surrounding She-Hulk was kind of a perfect storm of elements leading up to this thing. The original trailer was pretty ridiculous. At best, it looked like a so bad it's funny situation. Trailer 2 did not improve on that. That one looked flat out bad. Cringy humor, terrible action, feminism. And in the days and weeks since that trailer, the hype machine kicked into gear with the cast and crew making the rounds, which is when we started seeing super encouraging things like this. And this. And this. And this. Oh my god, that last one really baffles me. You've got the head writer of the show flat out admitting that, yeah, we kinda suck at writing lawyer stuff. Oh, cool. Well, I'm so glad you're writing a show about a lawyer then. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm sure we can expect a ton of authenticity when it comes to that stuff. How did you get this job exactly? Doesn't exactly bode well for Daredevil Born Again if they're hiring people like this, does it? Oh boy. But in my opinion, the real cherry on the cake is when the screeners went out. And I stopped looking at the early reactions pretty quickly because they were all pretty much saying the same stuff. Best MCU series ever! It's impossible not to like this show! One of the best things Marvel has done! Basically, it was universal glowing praise in the vein of, tell me you're afraid of losing your press credentials without telling me you're afraid of losing your press credentials. Crap like this is why I pay attention to mainstream critics less and less. It's like pulling teeth trying to find one that's actually honest these days. You seriously couldn't find one or two things about the show that were a little bit less than stellar? I find that hard to believe. And now, having seen the first episode myself, I'm calling all those people fucking liars. Because, oh my god, can we just skip to the end of Phase 4 right now? Because if this is the direction the MCU is heading in, it needs a hard reset and fast. So all these different stars seem to be aligning to create a politically charged scenario that was reminding me way too much of stuff like Captain Marvel or Ghostbusters 2016 for me to be comfortable. Then I watched the show. The trailers were pretty accurate. It's more or less the show they made it look like, but it's so much worse than we were thinking. Not only is it trying to be a comedy, and failing spectacularly at that I might add, it puts every bullshit feminist trope you can think of front and center. And most troubling of all, even from a basic writing competency storytelling perspective, this is an absolute fucking mess. The writers on Ms. Marvel had to press the retcon button more than once to facilitate their story. This show makes the continuity of Ms. Marvel look impressive. This absolutely reeked of the writers not even doing the most basic homework. Just in the first few minutes alone, there are such massive story gaffes where they either ignore basic MCU history or just blatantly change it because it didn't fit the story they wanted to tell. And beats the hell out of me why that is, because this episode plays like they couldn't wait for it to be over. This is the most rushed thing I've ever fucking seen, not including end credits. This episode is barely 30 minutes long, and in that time, Jen has done her full origin, gone through all her Hulk training, tried a case, and fought her first supervillain. All in a block of time that's barely longer than your typical sitcom. And if you think I'm underselling it even a little bit, just wait. I haven't even gotten to the bad stuff yet. The show begins with Jen Walters, attorney at law, practicing her closing address to the jury for a case that she's working on, and her remarks are all about the responsibility of those who have power. Should they simply not misuse it, or should they use it to protect those without it? Which is kind of ironic, seeing as how the trailers made it pretty clear that Jen was going to be coming down on the wrong side of both those arguments. She's rehearsing this to two of her colleagues at the law firm, and already this cast of characters is looking like a checklist of tropey SJW feminist nonsense. There's the smug, arrogant asshole white male who, the very first thing he does, the first thing is tell Jen to smile more, and then argue that he should be the one to give the closing argument, not her. And then we have Jen's diverse female BFF, whose sole purpose for existing, apparently, is to kiss Jen's ass, validate her at every turn, and tell her how amazing she is. Wow, writers, you're really blowing me away with these character archetypes. Seriously, your originality is stunning to behold. So asshole white guy acts like a dick, they kick him out, diverse female BFF worships the ground Jen walks on, then hints that if the case doesn't go their way, Jen can always grease the wheels by hulking out, which Jen then has to explain to us, the audience, via breaking the fourth wall, which, for the record, I'm not a big fan of as a concept, but she does it in the comics, so whatever. Most of the rest of the episode is a flashback to how Jen became She-Hulk, but rest of the episode is pretty generous because they literally cover that in one scene. And what a scene it is, holy shit. It begins with Jen on a road trip with her cousin Bruce. Yeah, that's how they introduce this relationship in the most unexciting way imaginable. Bruce is in his human form and expositing about how he invented an inhibitor device that prevents him from turning into the Hulk. And that immediately begs the question, why would he need such a thing when he can transform at will now and the Savage Hulk persona hasn't been a thing since Avengers Endgame? He resolved that, he made peace with it, and now he's Smart Hulk. Remember that, writers? You don't? Oh, you do, but you don't care. My bad. So this Hulk inhibitor doohickey gets one brief line of dialogue to explain its existence before the conversation moves on to what the writers are much more interested in, whether or not Steve Rogers was a virgin. I wish I was joking. Jen's theory, which she's very excited to share with all of us, is that Steve was in fact a virgin. Because, you see, he didn't have a girlfriend before enlisting, I guess because he was small and weak and women don't go for dudes like that. Then he became a super soldier, went to the front lines, fought in the war, got frozen for several decades, only to become an Avenger when he got thawed out, go from crisis to crisis, and that's when he wasn't a fugitive from the law, so he probably never had time for things like relationships or sex. Never mind the fact that literally the last thing we learned about Steve is that he had a wife and went back in time to be with Peggy. Apparently the writers don't remember that either. They were too busy subtly throwing shade at Steve for not getting any action and objectifying him for having a great ass. Because it's not sexist when a woman does it. If it was a male character talking about a female character this way, I'm pretty sure this wouldn't be played for laughs, but it isn't, so here we are. Then a spaceship shows up. It's even more random than it sounds. A spaceship shows up, Jen loses control of the car goes off the road, crashes, flips over a bunch of times, and wouldn't you know it, Bruce Banner, the Incredible Hulk, is the one who's knocked unconscious and has to be dragged out of the car by Jen Walters, the normal human. And that, you see, is the only reason why Bruce's Hulk inhibitor was even a thing. Never mind that he supposedly made it to stop him from doing that thing that he already stopped doing on his own and learned to control several years earlier, but the writers needed the inhibitor to stop Bruce from transforming into the Hulk when the car crashes, because if he does that, then Jen can't save him. If he does that, then Jen can't be the hero. And sure, her origin in the comics was about Bruce saving her life with a blood transfusion, but Bruce is a man, so that noise. We can't have him being heroic, or our super amazing badass heroine needing his help. Don't be silly. So Jen crawls out of the car, gashing her arm open in the process. Hardly any blood though, because Disney Plus. She drags a bleeding Bruce out of the car, and that's how his blood mixes with hers. Just 1 or 2 drops of Bruce's blood. That's enough to turn Jen into She-Hulk. And this happens so quickly, you'd think Jessica Gao, the head writer, had a gun to her head. Their blood mixes, and she transforms instantly. It's that quick. They've already blasted through her entire origin at the 5-minute mark. She hulks out and runs away. Bruce starts turning into Savage Hulk, which isn't supposed to be a thing anymore, but the writers don't give a shit. And then they just cut away. And we don't actually see either transformation, so thanks a lot, TV budget. Jen wakes up in the forest hours later, all disheveled and dirty. She makes her way to a roadside diner. She's trying to clean herself up in the bathroom when some women walk in, and oh my god, their reaction to Jen is like, if ever there was a sign that the writer was some pathetically single middle-aged woman who has no idea what audience she's playing to, this was it. Oh, girl, who did this to you? Whoever that person is, he or she or they do not deserve you. Here, we're gonna get you all fixed up. We're gonna do your hair, do your makeup, give you a whole new wardrobe. You are going to look fabulous. Literally, they give her a fucking makeover right there on the spot. And they break out these clothes and shoes that they were just carrying around with them for just such an occasion, I guess. And Jesus Christ, ladies, this woman has clearly been attacked or been in an accident of some kind. Why is playing dress up the first thing you think of? So Jen calls Bruce off screen. She's outside waiting for him when some men walk out of the diner. And you already know where this is going, don't you? These men immediately start acting like men usually act in a feminist-themed project. Jen is uncomfortable and tries to walk away. They follow her, acting all creepy and shit. And here's a little detail that may have been lost on the writers. Maybe the reason why these guys are hitting on Jen is because she's dressed like a hooker! I'm not even joking! Those women dressed her up like a fucking call girl with the high heels and the pink furry coat. It's like they wanted her to get hit on, and now here she is just hanging out by the side of the road? What the hell did the writers think this was gonna look like? Does that make the men's behavior okay? No, but still. Anyway, Jen gets fed up, she hulks out, scares the crap out of these guys, then Bruce tackles her, thankfully before she pulls a Captain Marvel on them. She wakes up in Bruce's beach house lab in Mexico. It's a place Tony built for him a few years prior. She finds Bruce in the lab downstairs back in Smart Hulk mode, and he explains what happened to her, which unfortunately means we're making another trip to Retcons R Us. According to Bruce, the two of them share a rare combination of genetic factors that allow them to synthesize gamma radiation into something else. His words. So basically, they turn into Hulks because of genetics. But that's pretty weird, because in the Avengers, which I have to point out because I don't think the writers saw that movie, it was stated that Bruce thought gamma radiation was the key to unlocking the super soldier formula and tested it on himself. So, him becoming a Hulk was because of gamma radiation mixed with super soldier stuff. But for some reason, I don't know why, the writers have thrown that out, and now it's just them having special genes. I swear to God, if they end up playing the mutant card here too, I'm gonna... No, you know what? Let's not even go there. Oh, and if anyone gives a shit, that spaceship from earlier, that was Sicarian. They wanted something. Bruce doesn't know what. It's never mentioned again, and I would be kind of surprised if they follow up on it, which is really annoying. In the comics, there was so much more going on here. Jen was shot by mobsters because of stuff going on with her dad, I think, and then they came back and tried to finish her off at the hospital, and that's when she became She-Hulk. Correct me if I'm wrong about any of that, but there was a story there, a chain of events that built up to something. Here, there's no story. It's just, we need a plot device to make a thing happen. Alien spaceship, there we go. Bing, bang, boom, She-Hulk. It's so obvious that they didn't give a shit how they got here. The only thing they cared about was changing She-Hulk's origin to fit their own narrative, which was about taking away anything that made Bruce heroic and giving it to Jen, because the only way clowns like this know to lift a female character up is by stepping on a male one. And given the way the show has treated every single male character we've seen so far, that should come as a surprise to nobody. Also, Jen's body synthesizes gamma radiation differently than Bruce's does, and he was able to use use that to completely heal his arm. So I'm better than you, Jen says? Gee, I wonder what the writer's agenda was when they wrote this. If only there was some clue. So Jen wants an immediate fix for this Hulk situation, but there isn't one. The inhibitor doohickey that got wrecked in the crash was just a prototype, and apparently Bruce didn't make any plans or schematics of the damn thing in case it got damaged, didn't keep any files on it whatsoever, which seems like a really weird oversight for a scientist. So that's gone now. He can't make another one, and there's no cure for this. Bruce has been struggling with it for years. So Jen is kind of stuck. And to follow up on that cataclysmic bombshell, we cut to pancakes. What do these writers think is so interesting about food? In the car scene, there was a bit with Cheetos, and now it's pancakes. Why all the food porn? What is this about? Bruce starts going over how Jen is gonna have to change the way she lives her life, avoid stressful situations, she can't go back to her old job, and so on, because if she were to lose control and Hulk out, a lot of bad things could happen. And figuring all this shit out could take a long time, but it's either that or She-Hulk makes a mess the next time a guy acts like an asshole to her, which on this show seems to happen every 5 minutes. So they put Jen in the buzzsaw chamber from the trailer. They have to monitor her vitals and figure out when she turns and what her triggers are. All very important things they're going to need to know. They go through that. She gets her She-Hulk on. It's the first time we get a good look at her. And yeah, the CG isn't great. Very TV budget, Uncanny Valley stuff. I guess it could be worse, but that doesn't mean it's good. Bruce is stunned that Jen has not become a Savage Hulk and has kept her mind after transforming, and Bruce is jealous. Not the only time they're gonna beat that drum. So since Jen doesn't have another guy to wrestle with, they can just skip all that stuff because Jen is just a boss at hulking apparently. Okay, there's a lot of oversimplifying going on here. And it pisses me off that I have to keep doing this because the writers either didn't know or didn't care about it, but the Hulk is basically a manifestation of Bruce's repressed rage, which unfortunately the MCU has never really gone into. Ironically, the only movie to try to explore that was the Ang Lee Hulk movie of all things. It was rage brought on by all the emotional baggage and trauma that Bruce had kept bottled up his whole life. If Jen doesn't have another guy, it's probably because she isn't burdened by the deeply rooted psychological issues Bruce has that come from stuff like being a victim of child abuse, watching his father murder his mother, stuff like that. Now, this is just my interpretation, but I think it's a much more interesting one than Jen just being better at hulking because Bruce sucks. But that's their narrative, and by God, they're sticking to it. Jen already thinks she's got this sorted and wants to go back to her life, but Bruce puts the brakes on because she has so much more to learn. How to control her transformations, how to control her anger, because even regular everyday anger could cause massive damage with this level of power. And he's not wrong. But as they're going to stress many times, Jen really doesn't want to hear it. And since the writers are obviously taking her side, guess how this is going to make Bruce look? Just guess. Montage time. Bruce is teaching Jen how to Hulk, going over all the stuff he's learned, and this is basically Jen acing everything without even trying, and Bruce getting butthurt about it so the writers have an excuse to make him look bad. She can one-arm throw a boulder further than him, so he double-arm throws a boulder into orbit because his fragile male ego was bruised. She does yoga better than him, make ground shock waves better than him, and his fragile male ego is bruised again, so he knocks her off a cliff. Yeah, not surprisingly, the writers don't seem to think very highly of Bruce at all. And frankly, Jen's getting a raw deal here too, because all her being the bestest Hulk ever right out of the gate without having to struggle with any of it does is make her a lot less interesting, less likable, and less relatable of a character than she would have been otherwise. And so we arrive at that scene. You know the one. Bruce is teaching Jen how to meditate, and he brings up how she has to become a superhero now because, as a Hulk, she can't just pretend that she isn't one of the few people on Earth with the power to protect it the next time things go horribly awry. It's the whole power and responsibility thing again. Jen still doesn't want to hear it, still wants to go back to her life, but she can't do that. Bruce says that she has to learn to control her anger, and this is the clip that IMDb put up on Twitter the other day that people were roasting the crap out of them for. And I'm going to quote what Jen says verbatim, and keep in mind who she's saying this to, okay? Here it is. I'm great at controlling my anger. I do it all the time. When I'm catcalled in the street, when incompetent men explain my own area of expertise to me, I do it pretty much every day, because if I don't, I will get called emotional or difficult or might just literally get murdered. So I'm an expert at controlling my anger because I do it infinitely more than you. I hate when people explain my area of expertise to me, she says while explaining Bruce's area of expertise to him. Oh my god, why does it always come back to shit like this? Jen, this is the Hulk you're lecturing. The guy who for years was hunted by the government, was ostracized as a monster, forced to isolate himself from others for their safety, had to stay in constant control of himself at all times because the tiniest slip-up could cause him to turn into a walking WMD that even he couldn't contain, at one point was driven to such extreme hopelessness that he attempted suicide, and you're lecturing him about how hard it is to be you because sexism is a thing? Go lie down in traffic, you oblivious, ignorant, self-obsessed, narcissistic brat! Here's the thing, Bruce. I know your life has been a living hell for the last 15 years or so, that you feel completely alone, and you've watched a lot of your friends and loved ones die, and you're still no closer to finding a cure for this thing that's been the bane of your existence for so long you can barely remember what life was like without it. But I have to deal with the petty annoyances of everyday life, being a woman in a world where all men are written to be smug douchebags. A guy at my work told me to smile the other day. Do you have any idea what that's like? Feel sorry for me, damn you! I wanted to shove her off a cliff myself, I swear to Christ. I am baffled by this notion that the writers think Jen simply existing as a woman means that she's better at controlling her anger than a guy who has no choice but to, because if he doesn't, many people would die. And of course, Bruce just sits there silently and eats this, doesn't even defend himself when he could shut down her whole bullshit argument with one sentence if he wanted to. How did these jackasses even get hired? Beats me. But if the Marvel Studios higher-ups are spread so thin these days that idiots like this are making the cut, they've got a big problem. Also, Jen can transform back and forth at will now. It's that easy for her because she's a super amazing badass and Bruce just sucks. Don't you even think about it. Get your ass back there. Do you ever wonder why I liked Kate Bishop and Hawkeye so much, while I'm much less forgiving of characters like Jennifer Walters? There are a lot of reasons, but one of the big ones was that Kate felt like a real person. The writers didn't make anything political with her. She wasn't just great with a bow and arrow like magic. The show made it clear that she trained and worked hard for half her life to learn archery, to learn martial arts. She busted her ass for a long time to develop those skills, and even then she still made mistakes sometimes. Even then, she still had things to learn from Clint, which she did with respect and gratitude. So when Kate Bishop did cool shit, it felt like that was stuff she had earned. Now compare that with these writers who act like respect and gratitude are bad things. Compare that with Jen, who's just mastering all this Hulk shit on her first try, totally schooling Bruce on stuff he's been wrestling with for a decade and a half because the writers just couldn't stand the idea that Bruce might actually have something to teach Jen, might have some genuine wisdom to impart about all this, and it should come as no surprise why I'm looking forward to Hawkeye Season 2, and I'm already dreading having to watch She-Hulk Episode 2. So Jen tries to go home, Bruce stops her, and even though Bruce has done nothing but try to help Jen since this whole mess began, she takes this opportunity to shit all over him, making him feel like garbage for being a cautionary tale, alone with no friends, no relationships, never seeing his family, and never dealing with a decade's worth of trauma that they're only now acknowledging is actually a thing. you, Jen. You. She gets in the Jeep, stomps on the gas, and even though the Incredible Hulk should be able to stop that Jeep with one fucking finger, it's being driven by a woman, so now it knocks him off his feet and smashes him into the side of a cliff. Now it's on. Hulk versus She-Hulk. And Bruce, who's being way more patient than I would be at this point, is still trying to reason with her. Why won't you listen to literally the only person who understands what you're going through? Because we're different people. Oh my god, that doesn't mean you don't have anything to learn here. Just listen to what he's saying for 5 fucking seconds. You're both Hulks that should supersede all this petty, asinine, hyper-politicized gender bullshit. Dumbass. But she doesn't listen, so they fight. The fight is short, but at least when Jen was fighting, she wasn't talking, so that's a plus. And I guess I should count my blessings that she didn't walk all over Bruce like I was afraid she would. The fight's more or less a draw, which was probably the best we could have hoped for, and it ends when Bruce's bar gets smashed. They rebuild it and kinda make up. Bruce decides to respect Jen's decision to go home, and Jen assures the audience that he doesn't mean it because she's a petty dipshit and couldn't even let him have that much. She does apologize for saying a bunch of mean things to him, even though she stresses that those mean things were true, so not much of an apology. She drives off, and that brings us up to the present, with Jen talking to the audience and stressing yet again that she was right and Bruce was wrong, proving that she learned nothing from this whole experience. The only thing that makes this a little easier to swallow is that since the episode is so short, at 28.5 minutes, it's actually almost over. All that's left is for Jen to give the closing argument at the trial. Don't screw this up, Walters, mutters asshole white guy, because what's the point of having a white guy if he's not going to be an asshole, right, writers? But before Jen can do her thing, Jamila Jamil smashes through the wall of the courtroom. And apparently this is Titania, one of She-Hulk's biggest nemeses from the comics, if not her arch nemesis. I don't know what possessed them to make her look like Peggy Bundy got a $2 makeover on the backside of the Las Vegas Strip. Al, I'm missing Oprah! But there she is, looking goddamn ridiculous. And I'm not saying any of her comics costumes would have looked great in live action necessarily, but you seriously couldn't have her look a little more dignified than this? Wow. No idea why she's there, but she's there for some reason, and Jen's the only one who can do anything about it, so Jen slips her shoes off, takes a moment to lament how she really loves this outfit, then hulks up and ruins her outfit. Oh no! And so, in the closing moments of the very first episode, we have She-Hulk versus her greatest adversary. But don't get too excited, because from start to finish, and yes, I timed it, this entire fight lasts 9 seconds. And it was fucking terrible. Titania throws a bench. She-Hulk catches it, throws it back, Titania gets crushed by it. Then, using some of the most embarrassing wire work I've seen in a big budget production in fucking years, Titania tries this flying kick. She-Hulk punches her out of the air, Titania's out cold, and that's it. That was the whole fight. 9 seconds. Titania went down like an absolute chump. So, no need to worry about your arch nemesis, I guess, because who needs one of those when you've got shoes? And hey, Jen, if you ever need to replace those for any reason, Titania can hook you up. She knows the guy in the women's shoes business. Al, let's have sex! I'm sorry, I gotta get my laughs in where I can, and God knows there were none to be found in this quote-unquote comedy. So She-Hulk transforms back into Jen, slips her shoes back on, and she's ready to give her closing argument. Roll credits. The episode's over. Please, let's not do that again. And there is an end credits scene, but it's just a gag. Because the writers were so fascinated by this Steve Rogers is a virgin thing, they just had to come back to it. Jen is heartbroken that a dude with such a hot ass died a virgin. So, yeah, there's our final confirmation that Steve is dead. Jesus Christ, of all the ways to tell us. And Bruce tells Jen the truth about how Steve actually gave up his V-card back in 1943. Captain America I couldn't tell you why the writers are so fixated on this, but this was actually the one moment that was kind of amusing to me. Not because it was funny, nothing in this episode was funny, but I did kind of get a kick out of the writers breaking the hearts of all the Steggy stands out there by confirming that Peggy did not take Steve's virginity, and that honor actually went to some anonymous floozy on the USO tour. Now, is that out of character for Steve? Oh, hell yeah. But f*** it. The whole Steve-Peggy thing has gotten so annoyingly blown out of proportion in recent years, and picturing all those fangirls crying bitter tears over this made me laugh more than anything in this episode. Unfortunately, when your show is a comedy, that's not a good thing. Okay, episode 1 of She-Hulk is in the books, and it sucked. It was loaded with third-wave feminist political idiocy. The writers had so few fucks to give, they blatantly retconned very basic story and character details because that stuff didn't fit the narrative they wanted. The storytelling was sloppy as hell at the best of times. They rushed through Jen's origin so damn fast, it was like they couldn't wait to get it over with. The complete disrespect for Bruce was downright infuriating. He spent pretty much the whole episode as the writer's punching bag, and lest we forget, there was also all this fun stuff. The one bright spot in all this is Tatiana Maslany. She was working overtime the whole episode, trying so hard to make this shit work, but there's only so far you can get on pure charm when the writing is so bad. I do like Maslany. I think she could be a good She-Hulk if she got a decent chance, but damn it, she deserves a better show than whatever the hell this was supposed to be. All those critics who were singing She-Hulk's praises after the screeners went out don't have one single leg to stand on between them. I'm honestly struggling to think of any episode out of all the Marvel Disney Plus shows that was worse than this. Maybe the Ms. Marvel finale, I don't know. But holy shit, if that's where the bar is right now, just imagine how much worse it could get from here. Lucky for you, you don't have to imagine it, because that's what I'm here for. God help me. Thanks for watching, and while you're here, be sure to do all the other YouTube things. Ding the bell icon and follow my social media to be notified when I upload new stuff. Links in the description. Leave a comment, thumbs up the video, share, subscribe, make sure you're still subscribed, and I'll be back with more soon. Take care, stay tuned. I'll see you next time.